The film begins with humanity in the near future. Due to the continuous advance of the sea over the entire Earth, humans were forced to create space dwellings between the orbit of Earth and the Moon. However, fewer than 100 were built due to lack of resources. Years pass, and some dwellings call themselves the country of Adrian, where such groups attack the others, as well as Earth when it is habitable, to steal precious resources. This generated a war decades ago, and the Allied forces fight to combat their enemies. It is revealed that the weapons used are made on Earth. Therefore, the conflicts that have lasted for more than 35 years are constant on terrestrial soil, and robotic weapons are part of the army on both sides. The scene then presents one of the supply stations filled with destroyed robots, and, lying unconscious beside them, Major Young-E. When she awakens, she realizes a new group of enemy robots is approaching and destroying what remains of the Major's robot battalion. Being an excellent combatant, she does not hide, returning to confront and destroy her enemies with agility and firmness. She has the aid of a special suit and weapons that destroy the robots. After Major Young-E finishes off the small squad of robots, she contacts Central Command and states that only she survived the confrontation and the explosion. Suddenly, a large robotic weapon appears at the entrance, firing at the Allied forces' soldier, forcing her to seek shelter and directly confront more robots that approach. Being instructed about the weakness of the weapon, Young-E seeks to hit the right point of the large mechanical structure and, after luring it to a blind spot, throws an incendiary grenade. However, the weapon has resources to extinguish the flames and frees itself from the fire. The pursuit continues, and the Major needs to hide from the enemy weapons scanner. Fortunately, with experience, Young-E makes the enemy shoot at the structure she is on, but, using a hook, the Major propels herself away and escapes from the structure that collapses onto the weapon, finally stopping it. Suddenly, she is struck by a shot and loses part of her fingers. At this moment, it is revealed that she is a high-technology humanoid robot. She enters pause, and the holographic training system ends. The human team of scientists enters questioning the details they overlooked and becomes frustrated by the same recurring error. Chief Researcher Se-Hun enters and hears her subordinates stating that the robot's program is almost perfect, but they need to study her brain map before proceeding. Se-Hun asks them to pause the improvements, as important guests are arriving. They move to another compartment of the chronoid installation, and robot Jung-A is taken to have damaged parts dismantled. Then her main structure is stored. Se-Hun proceeds to the presentation room, where the director of the place, Sang, prepares the environment to receive important guests who may offer more resources for the continuation of the project. A few minutes later, we see the generals waiting for Sang's presentation. He, together with all of Se-Hun's team, has been developing since the year 2130 a technology to help humanity fight its enemies. Major Jung-E is presented in the images as the inspiration for creating a perfect weapon, the Jung-E Project. Many years ago, she and her battalion of mercenary soldiers went on a mission to one of the country of Adrian's shelters, but they fell into a trap, and Jung entered a coma after the mission's failure. Sang states that the family authorized the project to try to help the Major. However, full recovery was impossible, so they decided to do something. The entire brain structure was mapped, and brain waves were converted into precious data, which were used to create an artificial intelligence based on the Major's combat capabilities, enhanced with the technology they now have. Sang presents the chief researcher and daughter of Young-E, who continues the presentation. Wanting to encourage the leaders to support the project, Se-Hun states that they are perfecting the Jung-A artificial intelligence to be implanted into the military convoy and achieve success in combat missions, since the Major was always excellent in her missions. The goal is to keep in the project only combat data and improve it. However, seeing the result of the last test, one of the generals questions the perfection of the new weapon, since it clearly reflects Jung-E's error, which caused not only her death, but also did not end the war when she had the chance, staining the Major's name. He confronts the abilities attributed to the robot, since her combat capacity always ends in failure and she does not escape the final test. The leaders make it clear that they will only support the project if the weapon passes the simulation. Seo-hyun states that they will succeed and leave the weapon ready, hoping to have her mother's name as a heroine for the Allied forces. Later, Seo-hyun goes to interview android number 17, a test robot with her mother's brain data. The Major awakens and acts as a real human mind would react, frightened when she sees that she does not have a body of flesh and feels imaginary pain. Seo-hyun reduces the sensation of pain, but Jung-hee panics without understanding the situation. Understanding that the evolution of artificial intelligence is due to the Major's last mission, Seo-hyun asks that the defective project be removed from the android and destroyed. Then she meets the new laboratory assistant, Jae. He encourages the researcher, saying that he has always been a fan of Jung. To him, when he was a child, she was his heroine. Seo-hyun states that her mother fought and became who she was because she needed money to treat her daughter's cancer. Unfortunately, on the day of the surgery, Jung-ae went on her last mission, which shook Seo-hyun. Since then, Seo-hyun blames herself, believing she forced her mother into a life of combat and prevented her from enjoying a happy and peaceful life. Jae tries to encourage her, asking her to talk about family matters the next time she interviews the android with the Major's mind. Then she leaves the installation and heads to the medical office. On the way, it is notable to see over what was once a populated city, and now buildings and structures were built above the waters. She soon goes to the medical complex and is received by the medical android. Talking with the specialist, Seo-hyun discovers that the cancer has returned and is slowly spreading inside her body. Receiving an unhappy diagnosis, Seo-hyun hears that she has at most 4 months to live and receives advice from the doctor to use neural transfer technology to copy her brain data and transfer it to an android. However, the cost is expensive for a perfect cloning. The researcher does not have such resources and considers the cheaper transfer, the same that was performed with her mother, Jung-gi, in which her mind data are shared with several companies that wish to have brilliant minds and clone them, making the transfer viable. However, there is no guarantee that it will be herself, possibly losing her essence permanently. Seo-hyun says that she will think about the procedure and leaves the technological office. Remembering the day she saw her grandmother signing the authorization for her mother's brain to be used for military purposes. Up to the present moment, the Major's body is preserved, and her mind remains constantly connected to the server. Research continues to perfect the technological brain for the android. In the following days, the new brain built with Jung-hee's data is placed into the test android. This time, before starting, Sang orders that they shoot the robot's leg to see how it performs in the simulation, making the test worrying for Seo-hyun, even though it is only a copy of her mother's data. The simulation begins, and android Jung-hee has difficulties defeating her robot opponents. She soon ends up captured and will be eliminated if she does not react. Seo-hyun believes it to be another failure, but this time, the dangerous situation and imminent death caused the artificial brain with Jung-hee's brain data to activate an area not previously used. Unfortunately, the combat capability is at a low level, and the android's death is quick. The next day, the team of researchers goes to the headquarters. They are received by one of the complex coordinators, where Sang will report his team's advances. The woman says that the company's attention is focused on other more useful products. Soon, she asks Seo-hyun's team to return and come back at another time. Before leaving, she jokes with her companion, implying that he is like his predecessor, something that confuses him. Later, back at the Chronoid Institute, Sang shows the military apparatus he is making. More androids ready to receive the perfect version of the artificial intelligence recreated from the combatant Jung-ae. Then he takes Seo-hyun to see the owner of the place, and as soon as they enter the office, Sang shuts down, revealing that he is an android with a mind similar to that of Mr. Feng, the creator of neural transfer and cloning. Se-hyun reports that she is making significant progress on the project, but is soon interrupted by her superior, who states that the war has finally come to an end and that the Allies have made a peace agreement with the country of Adrian. Feng says that they must now proceed with adaptation to a new future, without wars, without military weapons, and produce something more useful for humanity. Se-hyun, reflecting, realizes that the desire to have what would be closest to her mother will be deactivated and becomes frustrated. Feng observes the researcher's feeling and says that when he was younger, he created brain cloning and used himself to make another of himself, which he thought was a perfect copy. However, he himself reports that his creation does not compare to his true self. He says that the Jung-A project will soon be deactivated. Hearing that the project would not bring her mother back, Se-hyun asks for authorization to complete it, but Feng denies it and states that her copy will be deactivated and transferred to the domestic project. Having only a few days, Se-hyun and her laboratory companions act normally, even knowing that the end of the installation is approaching. However, the other similar to Feng continues the search to perfect the project. He conducts a new test with Android 22, but this time inside the laboratory. They activate it, and furious, wanting quick advances, Sang orders the cutting of the android's arm, which causes it fictitious pain. The action does not awaken the previous brain area, and irritated, Sang enters the test area and shoots the android's leg. When he asks them to reactivate it, Se-hyun interrupts and states that she is in control of the system and that the order given by Sang no longer applies there. Furious, he threatens the researcher, but she does not obey the order. Fortunately, Feng calls Sang. Then Se-hyun asks her assistants to leave, organize all the material and system data, and send them to her. A few minutes later, she is in the training compartment and checks the simulation recordings. She sees a red alert with data transferred by Jay, then goes to his room and questions him about it. He tries to make excuses, saying that he is analyzing the data, but, not believing him, Se-hyun enters the man's room. Soon, she comes across the female android without military clothing. Questioning what he is doing, Jay reveals that he received orders from headquarters to create a project that would provide greater entertainment for people. Seeing what they are doing with her mother's legacy, she becomes enraged, but Jay says that the authorization given in the past by the family granted autonomy for companies to do anything, and Se-hyun cannot prevent it. The researcher leaves discouraged and then goes to the laboratory. There, she finds Sang, who now knows that the project will be deactivated the next day, so he no longer prevents Se-hyun's desire to say goodbye to what she believes to be part of her mother. Soon after, she goes to the laboratory and reactivates Major Jung-A to say goodbye to her. Se-hyun tells that the mercenary was tortured by the enemies and, in a way to comfort the Major, states that soon she will succumb to death. Before she completely shuts down Jung-A, Se-hyun sees the previous brain area activate. The Major soon remembers her daughter and asks about her. Se-hyun says that the daughter is fine, and this is a relief for Jung-A turning to the war environment. Jung-A says that she lost a toy that her daughter had given her, something to help her in combat and to defeat her enemies. The moment is emotional for both sides, and soon the Major is shut down. The next day, at the project deactivation, the Jung-A android is taken to the simulation environment very early, but Se-hyun is already there and tells the subordinates that she will conduct the last process. She connects to the interface of her mother's created mind and disables all administrator connections, and no one else remains in control of her. Then she speaks, believing that the Major will hear her voice as in a dream, and tells everything that will happen to her from her last mission to the present. At the scheduled time, Sang arrives at the place and waits for the start of the final definitive test for the closure of the project. In the simulation room, the android receives neural activation. Soon we see Jung-A starting combat with enemy robots and destroying them easily due to her combat skills. Sang and the other researchers observe, disbelieving the success of the final test, but Se-hyun hopes that Jung-A's mind will fulfill the mission. Once again, she falls to the ground, showing Sang that the project was always a failure. He asks them to shut down the android, but the signal is interrupted. After his departure, Sehun leaves the compartment, while Sang's subordinates enter the simulation room. They connect to the Jung-A android interface and believe they are connected as administrators. But, upon leaving the place, the android acts naturally, with free will. In the corridors, Sang questions the shot that knocked down the android and returns to check the recordings more closely. In slow motion, he sees that Jung-A was not hit, and knowing that something is not right, triggers the alarm of the chronoid building. In the corridor, being taken to storage, Jung-A reacts when she hears the alarm and easily knocks out the workers. Meanwhile, Sehun runs to the laboratory and deletes all her mother's data. Knowing that she will soon be discovered for what she did, she runs to escape. Sang, hearing that the police force will take a few minutes to arrive, knows that it is enough time for the major to escape. Then he activates 3 robot soldiers to capture or destroy the mercenary at large. Jung-A sees that she will not be able to leave through the main entrance of the installation and goes to the android construction compartment that would be used in combat, all with her appearance from when she was on her last mission. Suddenly, the robots enter the place and search for the android. Noticing that one of the androids is disconnected, the robot discovers Jung-A. A fight between the android and the robots begins. There is a disadvantage, 3 against 1. However, the mercenary's skills are exceptional, and soon she destroys one of them. The combat continues, and the major acts more like a human combatant. With that, she ends up being thrown against one of the machines and has one of the prosthetic robotic arms torn off. Thinking quickly, the major's mind uses the laser of the machine beside her, manages to dodge the robot, and then destroys it, ripping off its head. The last robot arrives furiously and presses her against the wall. Fortunately, Seo-hyun appears and disconnects the robot from its functions. Then Se-hyun asks the major to trust her, as she came to help her. Meanwhile, the police force arrives at the place, composed of several robots armed for combat. Minutes later, they enter the compartment and, upon seeing the Jung-A android, fire without hesitation and kill her. Finding Se-hyun, they let her leave, being taken by the deactivated combat robot. Soon it is revealed what she had to do to escape. When the police robot connects to the system drive, it sees in the recordings that Se-hyun placed Jung-A brain in the robot and escaped, taking with her the brilliant mind of Jung-A, while only the android shell remained there. Se-hyun goes to the train station above and escapes with her mother's mind. Inside the wagon, Se-hyun states that Jung-A is free, but her words are soon interrupted by the sudden presence of Sang, who was already waiting for them inside. He shoots Se-hyun in the shoulder and is confronted by the Jung-A android being stronger and more agile. Jung-A injures Sang's face. When he observes his appearance, he becomes perplexed. Se-hyun reveals that he is only a puppet of headquarters, following their orders day after day. Suddenly, his interface switches to aggression, and he moves to fight the major. The fight causes damage to the suspended train controls and leaves it out of control. Sang throws the android out, but she manages to hold on and return inside the next second. However, the fight becomes disadvantageous, since more police force robots approach firing and jumping from another wagon. The robots enter the vehicle and engage in combat with the Jung-A android. Seeing her liberator thrown to the ground, Jung-A reacts with more ferocity and begins the immediate destruction of her opponents. Jung-A kicks her enemy Sang out, but he grabs a steel cable and returns to the lower compartment, then bursts through the central floor and drags Jung-A into a new fight. At this moment, the lower wagon collides with a building, losing stability and remaining suspended on the brink of collapse. Se-hyun grabs one of the weapons and fires a harpoon, aiding in the rescue of the android and causing Sang to fall and explode upon hitting the ground. Seconds later, the wagon stops in an isolated place, and the two brilliant minds speak to each other. Jung-A sees Se-hyun's critical condition and tries to help. However, the police are approaching. Se-hyun asks the Jung-A android to leave, to be free and live in the best possible way. Knowing that her end is near, she does not let the android take her along. As gratitude, Jung-A offers a caress that she only had with her daughter, even without knowing that the woman in front of her is Si-Hen, her daughter. As soon as the android leaves, Si-Hen wishes luck to her new mother and dies minutes later due to the wound and the progression of cancer. The film ends at dawn when we see the Jung-A android enjoying the freedom that her daughter gave her, in return for having fought to save her when she was still a child.